Morning, dear students. Today we are going to take the last section in chapter 4, A Portrait of the Artist as as a Young Man by James Joyce. As you remember, that Stephen is asked to join and become a priest. Once a priest, always a priest. So, join or not to join? That's the question. Let's see. Will he join the order or will he not? So, the chapter began, he could wait no longer. So, he's waiting outside Belvedere, college, waiting for his father to go out and tell him where did he get to go to university. So, we know that he did not join. He's not going to join the order. He's not going to be a priest. But he's here wondering what is he going to be. And during his wonder, he just looked at the sky, and in the sky he found the clouds, a day of dappled sea-born clouds. The phrase and the day and the scene harmonized in accord. Words, was it their colors? He allowed them to glow and fade, hue after hue, sunrise gold, the rosette and the green of apple orchids, azure of waves, the graphene. Here he is wondering at how beautiful the clouds are. Was it that he is interested in the colors? No. What? Is he in love with the rhythmic rise and fall of words? Yes. He here is having beginnings and hints of his epiphany. He's recovering after his pious life, the life that he renounced all kind of literature that we were filled of in chapter 1 and 2. He in chapter 3 and 4 we see only religious texts that they fill his soul with a dryness. So now he's going back and telling you that I think I love words because words are colors for me. Disheartened, he raised his eyes toward the slow drifting clouds, dappled and seaborne. They were voyaging across the deserts of the sky, a host of nomads on the march, voyaging high over island, westwards bound. The Europe they had come from lay out there beyond the Irish Sea, Europe of strange tongues and valleyed and windren and cinders and entrance. You see, he heard confused music within him as of memories and names. Here he started to hear music. You remember that he stopped listening to songs of music and then the music seems to recede, to recede, to recede, and from each receding trail, Shino, music fell always one long drawn calling note, piercing like a star of dusk of silence. Again, 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 a voice from beyond the world was calling. Do you remember the phantoms that were hunting him in chapter 2? The phantoms that, what is he going to be? Here, the only music and sound that he's hearing, he turned and he heard his friends in the water singing and playing, and they were calling him Stephanos, Stephano Forest, Stephanos. Their banter was not new to him. They were calling him because he has a very strange name. He had a Greek name. They were making fun of his name. They were calling him Stephanos, Stephanophoros. Okay? He had a prophecy. His name was his prophecy. He had an epiphany here. Their banter was not new to him, and now it flattered his mild, proud virginity. Now, as never before, his strange name seems to him a prophecy. So timeless seems to the great air. Here, he's saying that his name is beyond age. It can go to the all ancient kingdoms of the Danes. Here, he has the name of the fabulous artificer. He seems to hear the noise of the dim waves, to see the winged form flying above the waves and slowly climbing the air. What does it mean? Do you know the meaning here? Here we are connecting to the epigraph. Very good, the epigraph, where we are talking about the myth of Daedalus, the great artificer, the architect that designed the labyrinth, which he was imprisoned at, and he wanted to flee away from it, and he succeeded by creating his own wings. Here, he's telling you that he can almost see Daedalus flying on the waves. What did it mean? He wants to know. What does it mean that he's seeing Daedalus? His name is a prophecy. What again? Was it a quaint device opening a page of some medieval book of prophecies and symbols? A ho a hola a hawk like man. You see the image of a bird, a hawk like man flying sunward above the sea, a prophecy of the end he had been born to serve. Okay, he's born to serve. What? What is his prophecy? Had been following through the mists of childhood and boyhood, a symbol of the artist forging anew in his workshop out of the sluggish matter of the earth a new, souring, impalpable, imperishable being. Now he realized his prophecy. He has to sorry, to make himself wings to fly away from his childhood and boyhood to where his heart trembled. It trembled, sorry. His breath came faster, and wild spirit passed over his limb as though he was soaring sunwards. His heart trembled in ecstasy of fear, and his soul was in flight. He feels that he is flying. Okay, where is he going? I became an artist. What else? What else? His soul was soaring in an air beyond the world. And the body he knew was purified in a breath and delivered from what? Of incertitude and made radiant and complete with elements and ecstasy of a flight. How many times he has said flying and flight and birds. Ecstasy of flight made radiant his eyes, and wild his breath, and tremulous and wild and radiant his wind-swept limbs. And again, they called him Stephanophoros. His throat ached with a desire to cry aloud, a cry of a hawk or an eagle on high to cry, a piercing of his deliverance to the wind. This was the call of life to his soul, not the dull gross voice of the world of duties and despair, not the inhuman voice that had called him to the pale service of the altar. An instance of a wild flight had delivered him, and the cry of triumph which his lips withheld, cleft his brain. Stephanophoros. He's not going to join. He's going to be an artist. He is going to create. He's going to be a creator. His soul had arisen from the grave of boyhood, sprang her grave clothes. Yes, yes, yes. He would create proudly out of the freedom and power of his soul as a great artificer whose name he bore, a living thing, a new, soaring and beautiful, impalpable and imperishable. And then he saw a girl stood before him in the midstream, alone and still, gazing out to sea. He seemed She seemed like one whom magic had changed into the likeness of a strange and a beautiful seabird. Sorry. Her long, slender, bare legs were delicate as a crane's. Crane is a bird. He's comparing her legs to a bird, and he here is describing her as a bird. You see, his way of looking at her is not like a lust like when we see him in chapter 3. Sorry. His he is looking at her as one of the muses. She's a muse in water, giving him the inspiration to write. He's an artist, but he's comparing her to a bird. He is not looking at a woman. He's desexualizing her. Okay, a pure, save where an emerald trail of seaweed had fashioned itself as a sign on her flesh. Her thighs filled with, okay, we don't have to read that. And then uh, she was girlish and touch with wonder of mortal beauty her face. He was looking at her, admiring her. He is looking her from the tiptoes of her feet until he reached her face, and he did not stay there. He did not approach her because he doesn't look at her as a woman. He knows that he's an artist, she's a muse, and he has a role to play. He cried, "Heavenly God!" cried Stephen's soul. In an outburst of a profane joy, he turned away from her suddenly and set off across the strand. His cheeks were aflame, his body was aglow, his limbs were trembling. On and on and on and on he strode far out over the sands, singing wildly to the sea, crying to the greet the advent of the life that he cried to him. Here he started singing of joy. He's happy because he found what he was looking for. He found the voice that was calling him. Her image passed into his soul forever, and no word had broken the holy silence of his ecstasy. Her eyes had called him, and his soul had leaped at the call to live, to err, to fall, to triumph, to recreate life out of life. A wild angel had appeared to him. Look, attention, he is calling her an angel. The angel of mortal youth and beauty, an envoy from the fair court of life, to throw open before him an instance of ecstasy, the gates of all the ways of error and glory, and on and on and on. So here he ends with a beautiful moment of stasis, feeling like his soul is opening like a flower, like the petals of a flower. What? Opening one after the one, spreading its endless succession to itself, breaking in full crimson, unfolding and fading. What is that? His soul. He's comparing his soul to a wild, beautiful red rose opening in the wild life. Remember his song? Like Wild Rose Rotheth in chapter 1. That was his song. Yes, now he's fulfilling his dream and his call to be an artist. And this is how chapter 4 ends with our young artist becoming an artist after realizing his destiny. Thank you for listening.